Alright, so part 24 out of our lovely book, The Master Key System by Charles F. Haanel. So, introduction. Enclosed you will find part 24, your final lesson of this course. If you have practiced each of the exercises a few minutes every day as suggested, you will have found that you can get out of life exactly what you wish by first putting into life that which you wish. And you will probably agree with the student who said, quote, "The thought is almost overwhelming, so vast, so available, so definite, so reasonable, and so usable." End quote. The fruit of this knowledge is, as it were, a gift from the gods. It is the, quote, "truth," end quote, that makes men free. Not only free from every lack and limitation, but free from sorrow, worry, and care. And is it not wonderful to realize that this law is no respecter of persons, that it makes no difference what your habit of thought may be? The way has been prepared. If you are inclined to be religious, the greatest religious teacher the world has ever known made the way so plain that all may follow. If your mental bias is towards physical science, the law will operate with mathematical certainty. If you are inclined to be philosophical, the law will operate, or philosophical, Plato or Emerson may be your teacher. But in either case, you may reach degrees of power to which it is impossible to assign any limit. An understanding of this principle, I believe, is the secret for which the ancient alchemists vainly sought, because it explains how gold in the mind may be transmuted into gold in the heart and in the hand. Now, a few things that I want to add to that, because he did bring up the ancients. In ancient texts, it says that you must be before you can have. You must be it first internally before you can have it externally. And what have we been learning this whole time? That consciousness, thinking, is the only real way of truly possessing things. Because thoughts, are this live rock is a live rock, but it's gonna be a live rock to us as we think it is, so our thoughts of the rock are what give that rock life and its properties to what we perceive it to be. Even though this rock is still going to be this rock made out of dead and fixed material or fixed mineral, that's not going to change. Our thinking of the rock, our idea of that rock, what this rock means to us changes. That's the beauty of who we are as creators, our thinking. When we put a value on something with our thinking, that's when it actually, has some type of value in your life, because negative conditions, you could go ahead and turn your head away from that and not think any thought on that negativity at all and focus on nothing but the good, because as you focus on the good and your thoughts are directed towards the good, what do? We take on the form of that which we think, don't we? Yes, we take on that form and then we become that and express that into the outer world, which is why the inner world, the world of thoughts, moods, and feelings are the greatest, one of the biggest things we need to deal with when it comes to life. Because remember, energy, people feed off of your energy, people feel your energies. People do business with the guy who has great energy, because they could get that product from somebody else, but they're going to buy from that guy which they could connect with, which they feel connected to, which they feel the vibes from. Remember that induction, the process of induction, magnetic induction, that if you're up here in your vibration and a person is down here and you two meet together, both of you are going to meet in the middle because of that magnetic induction. That energy. We're not just dealing with the world of matter and the world of business. We're also dealing with energy and emotions and thoughts and feelings and how people think about your product. Because if somebody thinks a certain way about your product and okay, if they're skeptical about it, but the benefits of it, you need to find a way to change their psychology. You need to find a way to change the way they think about the product. That's the goal. That's the goal, because the thought of the thing is what needs to change. Because, like we just said, a thought that, as it is said, The fruit of this knowledge, as it were, a gift from the gods. The power of our thinking, and the fact that man can create, that the fact that man can think above of any plane higher than any other animal, which is the fact which makes him a creator and higher above this scale than any other creature. And it's very interesting because in our book, The Wheels of Life, that we're going over, it talks about the chakras, okay, the energy centers of our body, the anatomy of our spirit, the anatomy of our mind. It's very cool. We're going over that book right now. And they talk about in the book that the brain of man, which we've learned in here, that is the most wonderful piece of mechanism which has been given to us as creatures, that the brain of man has its circuits and functions. It's able to think an unlimited number of thoughts. That our brain has the ability, and the circuitry of our brain allows us to think any thought we think, any type of thoughts we think at all. We have the ability to conceive any type of thought in this world. That's what has made us greater than any other creature in this world, simply because of the fact that we're able to think that much differently. Remember, intelligence, that mind is all intelligence, and everything is made out of mind. This camera I'm recording this video in was first created by somebody's mind. It existed in their imagination. They visualized it, and then boom, they said, you know what, I see how this could make something great into the future. And then boom, they made the camera, and now here I am recording this on this camera. All of our phones have cameras. The camera is the thing, which came out of somebody's mind and intelligence. So creator, remember that whenever it is that you want to do, you have to first build it in here, and then it'll build itself outside of you. Everything is weaved through your life materially, through your consciousness, through what's happening inside of you. Let's continue. And that was the end of the introduction. Now let's go ahead and start with part 24. When the scientists first put the sun in the center of the solar system and sent the Earth spinning around it, it was an immense surprise and consternation. Because remember that back in the day they thought that the sun revolved around Earth, and that everything revolved around the Earth, and that the entire galaxy revolved around the Earth. But now, after science has come such a long way, and they found that no, the sun is actually the center of the solar system, and that the Earth revolves around the sun. All these different things that they're discovering. And this discovery was so immense that it brought surprises and consternations. And the whole idea was self-evidently false. Nothing was more certain than the movement of the sun across the sky, and anyone could see it descend behind the western hills and sink into the sea. Scholars raged and scientists rejected the idea as absurd, yet the evidence has finally carried conviction in the minds of all. We speak of a bell as a, quote, sounding body, end quote. Yet we know that all the bell can do is to produce vibrations in the air. Now, like I said, I personally have not read this chapter, but from what I was reading with our book You, he might be talking about our own personal spark of consciousness, and how we live in this ocean of consciousness, and we are all embodiments of this consciousness, this energy that is manifesting itself within all, through all, and creating itself within all and through all, and continuously creating continuously creating within itself from the things it already has created within itself by itself. I hope I didn't confuse you right there. It didn't exactly sound such like a simple statement, but yeah, this sounding body, that the bell does nothing but create vibrations in the air. It is our mind that creates the sound. It is our mind that hears the sound, because our ears pick up on nothing but vibration. But our mind, our consciousness, gives it life. It gives it sound. That's how we hear it as sound, but it's nothing but a vibration. Yet we know that all the bell can do is produce vibrations in the air. When these vibrations come at a rate of 16 per second, they cause a sound to be heard in the mind. It is also possible for the mind to hear vibrations up to a rate of 38,000 vibrations per second. When the number increases beyond this, all is silence again, so that we know that the sound is not in the bell, it is in our own mind. For example, you could have something that, gives off both sound and let's say heat. Sound and heat, for example. You're going to experience both of these, but this vibration, it's oh man, how can I? So vibrations with sound, okay? So a vibration has a long wavelength, like at a 200 something hertz, a long vibration, that if you play it on the guitar, it would be on one of the lower chords, or if I were to create a low vibration within my voice, it would be more deeper, because that vibration travels at a longer rate, and that longer rate causes it to be deeper, and then you're hearing this vibration as being deeper than you would, somebody was in a high vibration or is talking really fast, or their voice is like, at a higher pitch, they're vibrating it at a higher frequency, so you hear it not only at a higher pitch, but you just hear it at a higher pitch, and when these sounds, or when these vibrations move between 16 per second and higher, so you hear sounds between 16 per second and 38,000 vibrations per second. So when the vibration is at that speed, that's when you hear sound. But if it's higher than that speed, that's when you see or hear something else. Like light, for example. Light travels at an immense, rate of vibrations compared to sound. So let's say if the sound waves started traveling at a higher rate, and it could possibly turn into a light wave, but the vibrations of the thing would have to change. It's a very interesting concept, and it's a very, very cool thing that we're going over. And when the number increases beyond this, all is silence again, so that we know that the sound is not in the body, it is in our own mind. Or is not in the bell, I'm sorry. We speak and even think of the sun as, quote, giving light, end quote. Yet we know it is simply giving forth energy, which produces vibrations in the ether at the rate of 400 trillion a second, causing what are termed light waves, so that we know that all we call light is simply a form or a motion of the waves. So, a little concept that we got from you. Okay, if you haven't seen that, we read the full book. We have it on our channel. If you haven't been through the full series with us yet, I encourage you to check it out. But he talks about the sun in the introduction, okay, and that the sun is nothing but a huge ball of electromagnetic plasma. Remember how we learned that everything in nature is electromagnetic in nature, and that even our mind body, our subtle body, interpenetrating this physical body, is electromagnetic in nature. It's our aura. And this mind body that we have is living within this physical body. And they're both interconnected and intertwined. But this sun, nothing but a huge ball of electromagnetic plasma. And the only reason we see light is simply because, let's say here's the sun, and the sun is giving forth vibrations in every direction. Actually, we'll use this as our sun, because this is my sun. So we have our sun, okay, and the sun is distributing energy straight out from every direction. Okay, the earth, which could be, let's say this live rock. Okay, here's the earth and here's the sun. Okay, the earth is rotating around the sun, okay, and it's collecting all of that vibration and all of that ether, that energy that the sun is emitting. Okay, and as the earth pushes through, collecting all that energy, the earth in turn is also rotating on its axis, which is sending all those vibrations and energy that it's collecting within the atmosphere. And the reason why it's hotter towards the equator than it is towards the north and south poles, where it's a lot colder and it freezes, is simply because there's a lot more friction at the equator of the earth, the middle of the earth, while it does its rotation. And this friction causes a lot of vibrations within the ether, releasing a lot of heat, because remember what we've learned in physics, that heat, is created by friction. If you bring your hands together and rub them back and forth, they're going to get hotter, okay, because you're creating that friction. And then, of course, as we move away from the poles, the friction gets less and less, which results in less and less heat. And same thing with light. Light waves. You see all these different colors simply because of different rate of vibrations per second traveling across the ether. And that's interesting how, like, that also goes back into saying how they talk about, matter is nothing but an illusion, because everything you see is nothing but an illusion, because it is the expression of energy, an expression of a vibration. But the energy itself, is nothing but energy. You feel it within your heart. You can feel somebody's energy, but you can see it with your conscious mind, the expressions and manifestations of that person's energy. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's cool. It's really cool, actually. It's not crazy. It's amazing. So that was the whole phenomenon when it came with what he's talking about, the sun. And we know that light is simply a form of energy, and that the only light there is the sensation caused in the mind by the motion of the waves. When the number increases, the light changes in color, each change in color being caused by shorter and more rapid vibrations, so that although we speak of the rose as being red, the grass as being green, or the sky as being blue, we know that the colors exist only in our minds, and are the sensations experienced by us as the result of the vibrations of light waves. When the vibrations are reduced below 400 trillion a second, they no longer affect us as light, but we experience the sensations of heat. It is evident, therefore, that we cannot depend upon the evidence of the senses for our information concerning the realities of things. If we did, we should believe that the sun moved, that the world was flat instead of round, and that the stars were bits of light instead of vast suns. The whole range, then, of the theory and practice of any system of metaphysics consists in knowing the truth concerning yourself and the world in which you live, in knowing that in order to express harmony, you must think harmony, in order to express health, you must think health, and in order to express abundance, you must think abundance. To do this, you must reverse the evidence of the senses. And one thing that I want to add when he says about all this is, like, yes, we need to think that way, but we also need to do what we can to, believe it, feel its reality. That's the goal that we have, to feel it to be true, not just to think about it all the time, because, who we really are, thoughts are a product of who we really are. So we don't always want to be thinking about things, because our mind is always going to be put into activity, so we need to give our mind a rest, because I know from personal experience that sometimes my mind keeps me awake all the time, and I have a lot of trouble sometimes just trying to sleep, because I'm too busy thinking about things. And thinking is good. Yes, thinking is what creates things. But at the same time, remember, pro-life and pro-spirit, Shiva and Shakti. Okay, that's not part of this book, but it's part of the Wheels of Life. But Shiva and Shakti, pro-life and pro-spirit, we don't just live for the mind and the spirit of the universe, but we also live for the body, in nature, in life, because, yes, we're able to create things in this material plane by our thoughts and ideas and the power we have in our unity with God. But in order to do that, we need to take all of that and bring it into the external, manifest it within the natural realm, the realm of matter, and things and whatnot. Because if we're just thinking about it all day, we're just sending out vibrations and creating vibrations and hoping that this law of attraction will continuously bring us those opportunities. But remember, you have to take actions on those opportunities in order for it to actually build. Because the universe is not going to build something for you. It's going to bring it to you. Okay, you have to take action and build it yourself. Okay, that's the phenomena of us being the workers. We are able to do work with our hands and build something with these two hands. And we could build it from what we have in here to an exact replica of what's out there. But, one thing is for certain, we need money in order to do that. We need the money. When you come to know that every form of disease, sickness, lack, and limitation are simply the result of wrong thinking, you will have come to know, quote, the truth which shall make you free, end quote. You will see how mountains may be removed. If these mountains consist only of doubt, fear, distrust, or other forms of discouragement, they are nonetheless real. And they need not only to be removed, but to be, quote, cast into the sea, end quote. Your real work consists in convincing yourself of the truth of these statements. When you have succeeded in doing this, you will have found no difficulty in thinking the truth. And as has been shown, the truth contains a vital principle and will manifest itself. Those who heal diseases by mental methods have come to know this truth. They demonstrate it in their lives and the lives of others daily. They know that life, health, and abundance are omnipresent, filling all space, and they know that those who allow disease or lack of any kind to manifest have as yet not come into an understanding of this great law. As all conditions are thought creations and therefore entirely mental, disease and lack are simply mental conditions in which the person fails to perceive the truth, and as soon as the error is removed, the condition is removed and improved. The method for removing this error is to go into the silence and know the truth. And one thing that I want to add to this is having that pure stream of consciousness. Remember how he talks about attention and concentration, that we need to keep our thoughts concentrated and focused on the realities of life, so we remained focused in the reality of life. Because if we're not, then we could be thinking about the past and we could be thinking about the future and be entirely ignorant to the now, and now is the only time there is. The past is already gone. It only exists in a memory of one of your brain cells. People have strokes. They forget their memory because they have brain cells that die because they don't have oxygen going to their brain. When they don't have oxygen to their brain cells begin to die, and our memories are locked within our brain cells. And when we have brain cells that die, we can't remember those things. That's why it's important to okay, what was I going over right now? Attention, concentration. Yeah, the weapon of the Superman, because they keep their mind focused on what they need to do, and they keep their energies directed in the direction in which they want to go. And they're not distracted by things, because if you're distracted by something, then your energies, your mind is going to move to something else. Remember, whatever we give consciousness to is what we give life to in our own life. Because as a pure stream of consciousness, as an embodiment of that, that is what we are as our awareness. We're nothing but conscious beings, and yes, staying subtle within your mind, trying to keep things out of your mind that don't help you, that distract you, that hold you back, any bad habits that you have that it's not allowing you to move forward or as forward in the direction as you please. You can literally do anything you want to in this life, with our mind, our mind forces, the electromagnetic forces of which things are made out of. We have that, and we have that ability to move the things in the external world. Let's continue. As all mind is one mind. You can do this for yourself or anyone else. If you have learned to form mental images of the conditions desired, this will be the easiest and quickest way to secure results. If not, results can be accomplished by argument, by the process of convincing yourself absolutely of the truth of your own statement. And that's where the affirmation comes into play. Remember, I am able to do this. Regardless of how I feel right now, I am going to be able to do this. Even if I don't feel motivated right now, I am still going to do this. It's discipline. Discipline is the name of the game. It's not motivation. Motivation is what gets you started. Motivation gets you going, but it's discipline that keeps you going. Because not every day you're going to be motivated to do anything. Some days you're absolutely not going to want to do anything. But it's your discipline. Like, hey, I need to get this done. That's what makes things happen. Remember, and this is one of the most difficult as well as the most wonderful statements to grasp, remember that no matter what the difficulty is, no matter where it is, and no matter who is affected, you have no patient but yourself. You have nothing to do but to convince yourself the truth which you desire to see manifested. This is an exact scientific statement in accordance to every system of metaphysics in existence, and no permanent results are ever secured in any other way. Every form of concentration, forming mental images, arguments, and autosuggestions are all simply methods by which you are enabled to realize the truth. If you desire to help someone, to destroy some form of lack, limitation, or error, the correct method is not to think of the person whom you wish to help. The intention to help them is entirely sufficient, as this puts you in mental touch with that person. Then drive out of your own mind any belief of lack, limitation, disease, danger, difficulty, or whatever the trouble might be. As soon as you have succeeded is doing this, the result will have been accomplished, and the person will be free. Okay, I believe this should be as soon as you have succeeded in doing this, not is. Okay, in doing this, the result will have been accomplished, and the person will be free. And this is very interesting because he's essentially talking about, connecting with that person in substance. You don't exactly need to be with that person in front of you in order to help them. You could send them thoughts of praying, praying for them. Remember what we learned about praying? The true art of prayer is vibration. Entering into the state of something, moving into the spirit of a thing, and living from there. That's what creates things. That's what gives things life. Living from that state and acting from it. These things, how thoughts our thoughts are real things. It's a vibrational element within the air. That creative vibration. That I know for a fact that I know I've mentioned this before, but you've been with somebody and you were thinking something and they said something, and then you were like, hey, I was just thinking that. Or you say something and then they say, I was just thinking that. Or you were thinking of somebody right now and then they ended up calling you. Like for that moment in time, you connect with each other mentally. And it's an interesting, because remember this ether, this energy from which all vibration travels, and how your radio station is picking up on a vibration traveling across the ether, this ethereal substance which surrounds all of us, this infinite mind, and that the broadcasting station could be way out in Tennessee, but you could be here in Fontana still listening to that music because of that vibration, that radio station, that wavelength. Let's go ahead and continue. But remember that thought is creative, and consequently every time you allow your thought to rest on any inharmonious conditions, you must realize that such conditions are apparent only. They have no reality. They are apparent only because the reality of the thing exists within the thought. Thinking. Remember how we were just talking about with this live rock? This live rock is going to be always this dead mineral, but this live rock to me will be what we think it is. Like what it appears to us is going to be what we're thinking about it. Our opinion, whatever this live rock is to us. The value we give to a specific thing determines the amount of life it has within our own life. So all thought is a form of energy, a rate of vibration, but a thought of the truth is the highest rate of vibration known, and consequently destroys every form of error in exactly the same way that light destroys darkness. Because no form of error can exist when the truth appears, so that your entire mental work consists in coming into an understanding of the truth. This will enable you to overcome every form of lack, limitation, or disease of any kind. We can get no understanding of the truth from the world without. Excuse me, sorry. The world without is relative only. Truth is absolute. We must therefore find it in the quote world within, end quote. And I want to add something onto that the principle of correspondence by Hermes Trismegistus, and he talks about his 7 Hermetic principles, okay? And there's the second principle, is the principle of correspondence. As within, so without. As above, so below, okay? Remember how, even right here, we're learning that everything that we have outside of us is created by us in our world within. By our mind, by our thoughts, by our thoughts of things, by our feelings of things, by our emotions towards things, and these what was I moving into right now? Yes, these things exist in the mind, in the world within, and are expressing itself outside of you in the external world. And that's what the principle of correspondence is, as within, so without. Because everything outside of us has no real, yes, it exists, but at the same time it almost doesn't exist. Nothing exists outside of yourself. It's like it's there as something to perceive. That's what it is. It's there as for your mind to perceive it, and that God himself is the universal mind, the infinite consciousness, and it is God, being aware of things within himself, through us. He is aware of himself, and it is through us that he gets to create more of himself, because he needed to manifest his intelligence in some way, shape, or form. To train the mind to see truth is only to express true conditions only. Our ability to do this will be an indication as to the progress we are making. The absolute truth is that the I is perfect and complete. Now remember what we've learned, that the I of who we are is the spirit of who we are. I am that I am. Exodus 3:15 or 3:16. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial unto all generations. I am that I am. I am strong. I am. I am one with God. I am. I am God. I am, because God is all mind, and he has given us his mind. We were created in his image, and that is in the image of spirit, of mind, of intelligence. The real I is spiritual and can therefore never be less than perfect. It can never have any lack, limitation, or disease, because it can never be applied with any of these things. It is something that experiences and is aware of these things, but these things itself, lack, limitation, disease, is the effect of this awareness. It's interesting. It's an interesting, very interesting thing. The flash of genius does not have origin in the molecular motion of the brain. It is inspired by the ego, the spiritual I, which is one with the universal mind. And it is our ability to recognize this unity which is the cause of all inspiration, all genius. These results are far-reaching and have effect upon generations yet to come. They are the pillars of fire which mark the path that millions follow. It's very, very cool, because he talks about flash of genius does not have its origin in the molecular motions of the brain. When we were going over the Science of Being Great by Wallace D. Wattles, in the very first chapters, he talks about how no man is barred by mental deficiency. That even if your parents weren't exactly the brightest of people, the upward way is still for you. You just have to figure out how to set those brain cells into activity. What have we learned? How can we do that? By simply trying to push our thoughts to a higher plane of thinking. Start reading books that allow you to think greater thoughts. Hang out with smarter people, or people that think out of the box. Because that you're melding yourself with those things. You're allowing yourself to be a part of that. And as you become a part of that, you start thinking more along those lines. Okay, remember what we learned about thinking, that every time we think, we set brain cells into activity, that we can literally change the structure of our brain by literally changing the way we think. And it's scientifically proven that music, sound, consciousness, that the effect sound has on consciousness can literally change the structure of your brain. Remember the science experiment with the drum head and the sand, that they placed a bunch of sand on this drum head, and they just played sound vibrations through the drum, and then the sand took form and shape according to the vibrations that it was receiving through the drum head. Likewise with this, that our own thoughts in our own brain, this mechanism of attachment, that literally changes itself in accordance with the nature of your own thinking. We could be one person today and be an entirely different person tomorrow, simply because we change the way we think, but yet we're still that same person. That thing that underlies all of that, the thing which is unchanging, this spirit of the universe, this eternal flowing energy. Let us continue. Truth is not the result of logical training or of experimentation, or even of observation. It is the product of the developed consciousness. Truth within a Caesar manifests in a Caesar's department, in his life and his actions, his influence upon social forms and progress. Your life and your actions and your influence in the world will depend upon the degree of truth which you are enabled to perceive. For truth will not manifest in creeds, but in conduct. And how can we manifest the truth in our life? By learning the truth. Remember, thinking, because thinking, for truth will not manifest in creeds, but in conduct. And your life and your actions and your influence in the world will depend upon the degree of truth which you are enabled to perceive. Truth manifests in character, and the character of a man should be the interpretation of his religion, or what to him is truth, and this will in turn be evidence in the character of his possessions. If a man complains of the drift of his fortune, he is just as unjust to himself as he should deny rational truth, though it stands patient and irrefutable. If a man complains of the drift of his fortune, he is just as unjust to himself as if he should deny rational truths, though it stands patent, and irrefutable. That couldn't have been the most true statement that I could have read, because we're learning about thoughts and focusing our attentions on a specific thing in order to really bring it into our life, and keeping your mind subtle, keeping yourself in that continuous state of vibration, staying focused on that specific thing so you don't lose focus on that. Because if you set your intelligence somewhere else, remember that what mind does with the energy, your mind directs the energy towards that way, and as matter is nothing but an expression of this energy, when we think, we set our thoughts, we direct our energies, and then our body moves in that direction. That's how all of this works, and this if we do things like, I'm going to use smoking weed for example, because I've experienced it enough in my life to know that this is true. If you trying to do something very important, and you believe in this thing, and but yet you still have trouble letting go of those things that you are holding you back, or isn't exactly helping you stay focused on a specific thing. Because when you do that, you're changing your consciousness. You move into a different state of vibration, and not only do you perceive life a little bit differently, but your experiences of life will be different as well, and your vibrations from your mind will be different. And remember that life adjusts itself to your consciousness, that the infinite mind reflects back to you what is happening within you. So if you're doing these things that are taking your focus off of the directions you need to go, of course you're not going to be moving in those directions. And that's something that I've been, it's been dawning upon me, and it's something that I've intuitively known this entire time, but it's like it's not something you want to accept yet, in your life. Like, why should I be doing all this stuff now? Like the I don't want to say the friends I have, because like everything on here is saying that we can easily change you can change your environment. You have that choice. And I've been realizing my own power of choice. Even though I've been learning about it this entire time, it's not until recently where you actually start to see how your life is affected by the choices you make every second of the day. What thoughts are you going to think at this moment in time? How are you going to feel at this moment in time? What exactly are you going to do at this specific moment in time? And things that as such. And you still engage in some activities that you don't want to let go of yet because you still like the way it feels. And it's not like you have a girlfriend, or it's not like you have much bills to pay. You're just still figuring yourself out and taking care of yourself and what you have right now. And it's just progressing into applying it in your life. And it's funny because that brings me to this thing I was talking with my neighbor about, that sometimes it's like you get glimpses of your future and how who you're going to be in your future, and just who you are as a person. And still that power of choice comes into play. When are you actually going to decide to go for that? That that's who you are, and that's what you can have. But how long until you actually decide to go there and get it, to stay focused, to keep your mind focused, to keep your energies on specific things, to remove those distractions and things and whatnot. That's what it takes. Those are the things it takes in order to build the life that you want. Most people don't build the life that they want because they're living in this society. They're not taught this thing. They don't go out looking for this thing. Most people don't know about the power of their own thinking. They soon discover the power of that phenomena. Maybe with somebody, you think of one thing, and yeah, your thoughts may travel along the ether, but the power of thought itself, like to actually understand the concept of it, and the idea of it, and to actually accept it, that's totally different from just knowing about it. And like I said before, we've been learning about this, and we've, life experience is the best teacher. It's great to have all this knowledge there in your head, but you're not really going to truly fully understand all of it until you actually experience it in your life. And that's what I've been learning. And that's why I said it in the beginning of this video, or in the video I made before this, that I've come to that point where I need to really find that thing and apply everything I'm learning in here into my life, because then I would actually have the credentials to say, this is what I did, this is the books I've read, this is the information that I have, and this is what I know that is tried and true for me. Let's go ahead, and we still have a little bit more. Our environment and the innumerable circumstances and accidents in our lives already exist in the subconscious personality, which attracts to itself the mental and physical material which is congenial to its nature. Thus our future is being determined from our present, and if there should be apparent injustice in any feature or phase of our personal life, we must look within for the cause. Try to discover the mental fact which is responsible for the outward manifestations. It is this truth which makes you free, and it is the conscious knowledge of this truth which will enable you to overcome every difficulty. The conditions which you meet in life or in the world without are invariably the result of the conditions obtaining in the world within. Therefore it follows with scientific accuracy that by holding the perfect ideal in mind, you can bring about ideal conditions in your environment. If you see only the incomplete, the imperfect, the relative, the limited, these conditions will manifest in your life. But if you train your mind to see and realize the spiritual ego, the I, which is forever perfect and complete, harmonious, wholesome, and healthful conditions only will be manifested. As thought is creative and the truth is the highest and most perfect thought which anyone can think, it is self-evident that to think the truth is to create that which is true, and it is again evident that when truth comes into being, that which is false must cease to be. The universal mind is the totality of all mind which is in existence. Spirit is mind because spirit is intelligence. The words are, therefore, synonymous. The difficulty... See, you remember how I was talking about that? And how he says spirit is mind because spirit is intelligence. He says that in this part. But let's go back to here, part 4, when he talks about the I. And he says that the I, okay, this is 14, not 4. Okay, part 4. I was wondering why the first sentence looked a little bit weird. But he says, the eye of you is not the physical body. It is simply the instrument which the eye uses to carry out its purpose. And then he says, the eye cannot be the mind, for the mind is simply another instrument which the eye uses with which to think, reason, and plan. So if the eye isn't the mind, but the eye is the spirit of who we are, then why does it say here that, the spirit is mind, and because spirit is intelligent, the words are therefore synonymous? See, I was confused for a little bit as I was going through this book, and for a while I wasn't sure for a while, and I would even talk with my clients like I'm really starting to think that mind and spirit are the same thing, because they are. This intelligence. How can thought be a product of mind if thinking is the only activity that the spirit possesses? Things as such, and that consciousness itself, is said to be a mental activity. I thought mind and spirit were mental activities, that we've also learned that consciousness, mind, and spirit are all the same thing, and even the psyche as well. The psyche, they're all our electromagnetic subtle body, and there's only two, spirit and matter. That's all. Well, spirit, matter, and energy. Energy is what spirit uses to mold matter. The difficulty with which you have to contend is to realize that mind is not individual. It is omnipresent. It exists everywhere. In other words, there is no place where it is not. It is therefore universal. This is exactly what me and my brother were talking about with awareness just yesterday when we were up in the mountains. It's like we are everywhere, but at the same time we're nowhere, because all we really are is awareness. We're experiencing life through this being. Like I'm experiencing life as Corey through Corey, but yet I am this infinite consciousness, and likewise with you, viewer, creator, you are experiencing your life as this embodiment of which you are in now. But me and you are the same. Behind the mask we wear, we came from the same source, which has created all within itself and has moved everything within itself, and at the same time is still holding everything in its place. This mind, this intelligence that is all that we are. Remember that the one of the most greatest things of all, that I am God. I and my Father are one. That, what was it, 1 Corinthians? 3:16. That know ye not that ye are the temples of the living God? Okay, we're almost done with this chapter. Men have, therefore, generally used the word God to indicate this universal creative principle, but the word God does not convey the right meaning. Most people understand this word to mean something outside of themselves, while exactly the contrary is the fact. It is our very life. Without it, we would be dead. It is consciousness. And even science has found out that nowadays that everything is made out of consciousness, that even matter itself, the basis of matter, is consciousness. Without it, we would be dead. We would cease to exist. The minute the spirit leaves the body, we are as nothing. Therefore, spirit is really all that there is of us, because when the spirit of who we are leaves, this physical thing of what we are dies. Remember that thinking being the only activity which the spirit possesses, is our thoughts of things which give life to that thing, because the thing itself is nothing but something that is. But how we perceive it to be, our awareness of that thing, is what's going to determine its value, or what it's going to be in our specific life, our own personal spark of consciousness. It's interesting, it's amazing. Now that the only activity which the spirit possesses is the power to think, therefore thought must be creative, because spirit is creative. This creative power is impersonal, and your ability to think is your ability to control it and make use of it for the benefit of yourself and others. When the truth of this statement is realized, understood, and appreciated, you will have come into possession of the master key. But remember that only those who are wise enough to understand, broad enough to weigh the evidence, firm enough to follow their own judgment and strong enough to make the sacrifice exacted, may enter and partake. This week, try to realize that this is truly a wonderful world in which we live, that you are a wonderful being, and that many are acknowledging to a knowledge of the truth, and as fast as they awake to come into the knowledge of the, quote, things which have been prepared for them, end quote, they too realize that, quote, eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, neither hath it entered into the heart of man, end quote, the splendors which exist for those who find themselves in the promised land. They have crossed the river of judgment and have arrived at the point of discrimination between the truth and the false, and have found that all they ever willed or dreamed was but a faint concept of a dazzling reality. Now that's the end of part 24, and we are ending with this quote by S. Smiles, and I quote, though an inheritance of acres may be bequeathed, an inheritance of knowledge and wisdom cannot. The wealthy man may pay others for doing his work for him, but it is impossible to get his thinking done for him by another, or to purchase any kind of self-culture, end quote. Now I want to go ahead and let's go ahead and read this questions and answers. So question number 1, or 231. Upon what principle does the theory of practice in every system of metaphysics in existence depends? Upon a knowledge of the truth concerning yourself and the world in which you live. 2. What is the truth concerning yourself? That the real I of you, or ego, is spiritual and can never be less than perfect. 3. What is the method of destroying any form of error? To absolutely convince yourself of the truth concerning the conditions which you wish to see manifested. And one thing is for certain, that you can't convince yourself to believe in something that you can't see it to be true yourself yet. You know, if you're having trouble just understanding this information and then getting something out of this information, ask the universe, have faith that there is a greater power and there is something greater than you are, that you came from something, that all that we are is an embodiment of all that is something that is greater than us. Because if this physical body dies, we leave this body and we go somewhere else, but this physical realm that we live in still continues and goes on. Just the fact that right there can happen should just already be enough evidence for you that, hey, there is something greater than each and every single one of us, and this greater part of what we are is our higher self, our real self, as you can say, our real unconditioned self that has embodied itself within this creature and conditions itself to be a certain way. 4. How can we do this for others? The universal mind in which we live and move and have our being is one and indivisible. It is therefore just as possible to help others as to help ourselves. 5. What is the universal mind? The totality of all mind in existence, which it consists of all three of energy, matter, and mind, consciousness. Now before we continue, I want to talk a little bit about the 3 gunas from the Wheels of Life, and they talk about that everything in this universe is made from 3 basic properties, all intertwined into one, which would be mind, energy, and matter. Because matter rules in the tamas plane, which is the physical plane. Energy rules in the rajas plane, which would be the force, power, energy, and mind, intelligence, consciousness rules in the sattva plane, which directs the energies, which in turn directs the elements or the material or matter of the world. 6. Where is the universal mind? The universal mind is omnipresent. It exists everywhere. There is no place where it is not. It is therefore within us. It is, quote, the world within, end quote. It is our spirit, our life. 7. What is the nature of the universal mind? It is spiritual and consequently creative. It seeks to express itself in form. And adding on to this, the nature of the universal mind is electromagnetic in nature, and it electromagnetism. Everything is created out of this thing. What is meant by thinking? Hold on, I missed one. 8. How may we act on the universal mind? Our ability to think is our ability to act on the universal mind and bring it into manifestation for the benefit of ourselves and others. What is meant by thinking? Clear, decisive, calm, deliberate, sustained thought with a definite end in view. Sustained thought. Focusing your mind on one specific thing. Remember, success is the progressive realization towards a worthy ideal, a worthy idea that the individual has. You know, like, this is an idea that I had for me to do. You know, and there's tons of work for me to do with this thing. I legitimately feel that my future will have a lot to do with the sharing and spreading of this information. And then lastly, what will be the result? You will also